Good morning, everybody. This is Bethany from Wandering Intentionally. I am coming to you from my deck. It's really early out this morning. It's probably just after 6. Got my coffee done. Having a little coffee with, I used a Premier protein shake as a creamer. It's okay. You can hear the traffic. This time of year I love being able to get out on my deck. I love being outside. You can see I've got a spot here and a spot here. My son's cat got me this morning. I was playing with him. I stopped playing. Evidently he didn't get the memo. I leaned down to do something and he, 2 claws, whoosh, and he got me. And I was bleeding pretty good, but you know, he's a kitten. He's an evil one, but he's a kitten. So yeah, so I am sitting out here this morning gathering motivation for what I have ahead for today. Thought I'd do a real-time chat, or at least real-time for me. Today is Thursday, the 27th of May, and already we've had temps higher in Maine than we normally have until like July. It's been quite warm. Yesterday was quite warm. I've already hauled out the summer goods. So yeah, so we are dealing with warmer temps. We had a good thunderstorm come through last night, and you know, I was following a lot of the storm chasers online. They were out in the Midwest and up through into New York, Pennsylvania, that type of area, following severe weather. You know, I send a lot of prayers out to them. I hope everybody is okay. There were some pretty scary storms that came through, and we got the tail end of it. Of course, here in Maine, we do get tornadoes, but not very often. They've had some pretty significant ones over the years in New England, but certainly not as much as the poor Midwest gets hit with, or Tornado Alley. So that's definitely something to consider when you are thinking about where you want to go, because you know, I think about that as I was watching it yesterday, is that we have this 35-foot fifth wheel that, yes, we could pick up and go, but could we outrun a storm if it were coming through? So there is that thought. And you know, part of what I would like to do, I mean, you'll see the plans change a lot significantly over time, is to sort of head towards the middle and down into the country. That way, eventually, it's still gonna be some time off before then, but yeah, I mean, that's right down Tornado Alley, and as beautiful as it is, we're a couple of Mainers, and you know what? We have this luck that if anybody is going to be in a bad weather situation, it's going to be us. You know, back when the kids were, I'm trying to think how old they were. Tori must have been about 13, and my son, so he would have been about 8. We were camping in Pennsylvania. I don't know if I've told this story or not, but I'll go ahead and tell it again, because it's sort of a significant warning to people who are in campers. We've camped for years. This is nothing new. So yeah, so we had gone to Pennsylvania, which was, it was not our first time at this campground. We had been there a couple of times, I think, before that. It is about 30 minutes north of Gettysburg, between Gettysburg and Hershey, sort of in the mountainous areas there. It's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. and a lot of little streams and stuff that run through it. We were staying actually in a town called Mount Holly Springs. If you want to see a beautiful little town, it's in, I'm gonna screw this up and somebody's gonna correct me on this. Shellykill? I know I always say that. That's the county. It's sort of right in the middle. If you did a triangle between Hershey, Gettysburg, and say Amish country, you would pretty much come up with that area. It's south of Carlisle. Carlisle during the summer has had huge antique auto trades and swaps and shows that they do. They're very well known for that, among other things. But so we're really familiar with the area. We've been there several times. And this particular trip, we were taking out our new to us, I'm sorry for the traffic. There's not a lot I can do about that. It's commuting time, and I live on a heavily busy track. So we had a tent camper. It was I want to say it was a Dutchman. Beautiful camper, great. We hadn't had it that long. Decided that we wanted to go a step up from the tent because we had been doing tenting for so long. And before we left, I kept watching the weather, and I thought something was telling me that something was off, and I couldn't figure out what it was. But I kept watching the weather. And like I said, if we're gonna get in a bad situation, we'll find it. Big truck. So we, before we left Maine, I called, this was like a week before, I called the campground and said, we're scheduled to be in where we usually camped, which was on the lower part of the campground, and it was next to a beautiful little stream. Loved it. Little tree-lined stream, gorgeous. And I wanted to make sure that I shouldn't pick a different spot. Should I pick something higher up in the campground? Just in case. So it had been a pretty rainy spring. And so I called the campground, and they said, "Oh no, hon, you don't have to worry about this. We haven't had any flooding since 1976. They said, you won't have any problems at all." So we said, okay, and I was still feeling like something was going to happen, but I said, okay, all right. So we headed off, and we drove it's like 10 or 11 hours from Maine to that area, and got there, set up. The first night we were okay. We were exhausted from the trip, made it all in one day, got set up. The second, that was on we got there on a Saturday night, because on Sunday the campground emptied out, except for us down in the lower basin. And of course, being Sunday, all the weekend warriors all leave, and we were there for a week, or close to a week. So we were pretty much the only regular or people who were regular campers that were down in this area next to the stream. And it started to rain, and it started to rain a lot. So that second day we were there, we did a few things around. We rode around for a while and did some outside stuff, and it was just kind of drizzly and rainy and yucky. And when we got back, we noticed that the stream was getting really high. Day 2, it rained again. Or that was day 3. Day 3, it rained again. At this point, we're starting to get really worried, because We had gone over to Gettysburg. It was raining when we went to Gettysburg. It just seemed to not being letting up. And that stream was getting higher and higher. And I said to Keith, I said, I'm getting worried. So finally, I think it was the fourth day. No, it was the night of the third night. When the sun went down, it was black as anything out there in that basin. And we had lit a fire in the ring. And sort of keeping an eye on the river and going, okay, yeah, we need to be aware of what's going on here. By the time we started to go to bed, it had inched up to the edge of the banks. And we thought, hubby and I talked about it. We said, we'll keep an eye on it. In the morning, we'll move the camper. Well, in the middle of the night, it got up to the fire ring and put the fire out. And so we were starting to panic, figuring the bottom of this camper is going to be like a boat. We're going to float off. And we can't see anything because there's no lights down there. The only light we had outside, really, other than the camper or the truck, was the campfire. And that's pretty much out. So when it got up to the bottom of the steps to the camper, hubby said, I'm moving this to higher ground, whether they like it or not. And he popped in one side. Here we are in the dark, put the kids in the truck, popped in one side of the camper, didn't even put it down. We just moved it across to the basin to a higher ground. Thinking, okay. And we stayed there till morning. The only problem was, by morning it was already up to the camper again. And the lower basin was filling. So we moved it again. This time we moved it up to a much higher, near the entryway to the campground. It was up the highest spot you could probably get. And we tried to ignore the fact that it was still raining. And just have a good time. Because we knew the kids were young. We just wanted to have a vacation. And so we ignored it, went out for the day, went to Gettysburg again, came back, and now the lower basin has filled and parts of the other campground are flooded. And they were hauling out the people who had left regular campers down there, like fifth wheels or whatever, who only come on the weekends but leave their camper there, were in trouble because it was up to the bottoms of their campers now. And the campground owner was out there with a tractor, and he was pulling the campers up. And my husband, being the guy that he is, got in his truck and started hauling out campers. And at that point, they weren't even pulling them off the jacks. They were just pulling them out. They weren't putting up the jacks. They were just getting them up, getting them out, and just to do what they could to save them. And my daughter and I were going through picking up pieces of people's campsites that were floating. The small stream that normally runs through the campground had become this torrent. And at one point, we were out moving picnic tables out of the way because we figured they were just going to become huge obstacles. And we were trying to get them out of the way so they didn't run into people's campers and become a bigger issue. We were out moving a table, and this lady came up. For this lady who could not move, she was elderly, she was disabled, and so we were out there helping her. And my husband was moving stuff, and she said, oh, just, hopefully my pet is safe. And my husband said, your pet? You have a pet out here somewhere? And she said, oh yeah, I have a snake out here. So we all kind of looked at each other and went, Ooh, okay, we're knee deep in water out here, and there are snakes. Oh yeah, we're in Pennsylvania, we're not in Maine anymore. So yeah, that day was the day we decided we've had enough, so much for this. So when it got to be about 8 o'clock, my husband was at the end of his rope. We were tired, we were damp, we were wet. We had played more card games than I think I've ever played on a camping trip in my life. So in the dark, we put the camper down, put the kids in the back of the truck, in the back seat of the truck. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, we decided to head for Maine. It was just crazy because we were listening to them talk about the dams. In that area is a series of lakes and streams. And as one was flooding, it was going further and further. It was coming closer and closer. It was getting worse. And we just knew Mount Holly Springs is built around a little spring. It's a little stream and a spring. So yeah, we knew we had to get out. So we did. 1 o'clock in the morning, we were out buying hot dogs so we could get the kids on the road. They're bundled up in the back of the truck with their blankets. And we drove all the way to the New York border before we finally pulled into a truck stop, shut off the truck, and fell asleep in the truck because we were so tired. I think it was probably, I don't know what time it was. All I know is as we were coming up over the mountains in Pennsylvania, just sort of the northeastern mountains, that major truck route that comes up through there, they were closing the road behind us because of flooding. It was the highest the Shenandoah River had ever been in that time. And so they were worried about the dams as we're going up over this mountain, and the dams are, up there. So that was our experience with bad weather. And we certainly, it's one for the books now. We can laugh about it. It was scary at the time. My son, who like I said was pretty young, was in the back, and he was worried we were going to lose the camper off the back of the truck. And every once in a while we'd be riding along. My daughter fell right asleep. My son wouldn't sleep. He's always been the worrier. He kept saying, "Oh, camper's still behind us. Camper's still behind us." So yeah. So that is part of our history with camping. Or travel in general. If there's strange weather, we're going to hit it. So I think there is a need to be prepared. There's your story time for today. So what's going on around here? Well, I've started back on keto again. And for those of you who haven't followed me for a while, last year I lost 30 pounds doing keto, and I was doing really well. And then we went into lockdown, and I gained back not everything, but pretty darn close to what I had lost. So I am back on keto, and there are people who agree with it and there are people who don't, but I know that it works for me. So, I apologize if you don't like it. That's fine. That's okay. For me, it works, and it does work well with my, I have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disorder. It helps reduce the inflammation, the diet does. So for me, that's a huge plus. So I'm back on salads, lots and lots of salads. I don't do the full fat content usually. I don't worry as much about that as I do as keeping the carbs. I focus more on the carbs, getting those as low as possible, hence my premium protein drink in my coffee this morning. Maybe if I had regular coffee that might be better, but it was like a creme brulee coffee. So yeah, we camped last weekend, and I'll be putting up a video on that. I'm doing a review of the campground we stayed at last week. That was at Saco Valley Campground in North Conway, New Hampshire. Another one that we had stayed at, I don't know how many times before. We've stayed in it, in everything from a tent camper to a tent. You name it, we've stayed in it up there, except for a fifth wheel. So this was our first time in a fifth wheel. And again, right on the Saco River. That seems to be our sweet spot. We like rivers, or at least I do, since I booked them. It's getting loud. We are not camping for Memorial Day. I know, there's a lot of people, what do you mean you're not camping? We are going to go the weekend after Memorial Day. It was just too crazy and too expensive to book for Memorial Day weekend, so we decided to put it off. Also, I'm in the process of looking for a job, so we're trying to work around things and make sure that I'm available for job interviews. So I'm doing that as well, and I'm writing a book, and I'm editing things, and so I've got a lot going on, and this just gives me a chance to do all of those things. So, all right, so we're at the 21 minute mark. I'm gonna wrap this up for today. You know, I want to thank y'all for joining me this morning. I hope you have a beautiful day, and we'll see you out on the road. Bye-bye.